I think the idea of doing a sequel for this, people might cringe at that idea, but why I think it was the right move, right, is the first one's such a smash, right? Inside Out makes what we talked about it a couple episodes ago, $844 million. Okay, so obviously there's an appetite for this film, and also there's so much ingenuity with this film. And so I feel like Pixar with like Elemental, they wanted to go back to being super creative with their world building, but it didn't have any like name recognition with Elemental. There's no famous stars like voicing any of the actors. We're not familiar with the characters themselves, right? But when you go say, okay, we're going back to creativity and a place where we're doing a sequel to one of the most creative projects we've ever done, I think this was a perfect way to kind of move into a different era of Pixar. I did not think this movie was as good as Inside Out, but did I have a great time watching it? Yes. Do I find this movie more rewatchable than Inside Out? I think I probably do. I think this movie was hilarious. I had a great time at the theater watching this movie. And dare I say, the hockey sequences in this film talk about Pixar being inclusive, putting hockey as a main subject of one of their films. I thought it was so much fun, right? But I like the additions to the cast here. I think it does it does what a sequel is supposed to do, right? It expands the world, and then it also shows us some really cool new places, right? Like the vault, and you got the sarcasm, right? You have the stream of consciousness. I
The
think it just
brainstorm.
the brainstorm, it just built off all the smart ideas in the first one and just said we have so much left in the tank. It made me feel like the sequel, it wasn't forced, it was earned. I had a great time watching it.
I think it was earned. I agree with you that this is less than the first one. Like this is not as good as the first one. But I would say that those are like party tricks. Those are, oh, that's clever. Oh, brainstorming. Oh, like deep dark
Not fooling
secret in the
Ricky.
vault. Wait, hey, am I wrong? I felt like this movie, like it felt very formulaic. It was like, oh,
Ooh.
let's you know what? We had joy and sadness, and then our boy Bing Bong, rest in peace. But let's make sure sadness and joy, which I think worked well in the first one, and sometimes unbearable at times, like you said, with sadness. Let's send sadness back up to HQ, and then everyone that was in HQ last movie, they get to be with joy this movie. But it's the same type of journey where they have to get something and then they bring it back.
This is a
It's
great
the
point you're
same
making.
thing,
Yeah.
and it's kind of just clever with the brainstorm, the sarcasm.
No, 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 no. Don't rip on that part. But the idea to think that, hey, you're watching a different movie, like we're just having joy with different characters, and then we're going like sadness in the control room. It is the same formula. It's just it's a journey. It's a journey on the way back to the control room. That's all it is. It's the same thing, but you're just running into different characters in
But
different places. So when you call it kind of like gimmicks, like I'm not like party
a
tricks,
little bit.
I do see what you're saying a little bit. But did I have a great time watching? Yes.
You're
And they
right.
were, and to talk about like, hey, party tricks, they'll get me every time when they go into someone else's brain and they show me the control room and they show like an adult versus a kid or a different one of Riley's friends or some random person, a baby, like or a dog in the end credits of Inside Out. They kind of just leaned on those type of tricks that worked there, and they were successful in this movie too. Totally get what you're saying.
And I also will say, like, they definitely were more in the real world, like with Riley, than in the first one, it felt like. And I think it actually worked pretty well. Like, they did puberty really well in a 3-day sequence. Like, again, it was 3 days at a hockey camp. So you can't, like, cover everything. And I know some people were, like, saying, why didn't you have this emotion or this happened or that happened? Like, it was 3 days and it just happened. So I understand it. And I would just say the ping pong or the tennis match, we were back and forth, it was kind of like rushed at times, felt. But at the same time, I was like, oh, the Riley scenes actually kind of hit because like it was very relatable. Versus like the first one, it's like she moved across the country and it just felt like, oh, the movie is inside her mind, but then we have to show you what's going on to kind of tell you what's like the meaning behind this inside her mind. Here it's like kind of like working in more of a tandem, which I thought was better. Maybe the one thing that was better than the first one.
I actually like the scenes with Riley better in Inside Out too. And
Yes,
there
agree,
might there
agree.
might be a hockey bias here, but also with the theme of anxiety, right? The character played by Maya Hawke, excellently played by Maya Hawke, I will add, probably the best performance she's ever had in all honesty.
Jesus.
But like to have like that in the climax of the movie, the character on the ice in the penalty box having an anxiety attack. It's just like it seems very relevant, right, for this time period. But I did also I cringed at some parts. It's just like this. What makes me not love Inside Out in the two movies is that there's so many times where there's cringeworthy moments, and you just want to go back inside of Riley's brain. I just don't find that the human parts are as compelling or fun to watch. They're not fun to watch.
They're
None of the
not.
Riley
I
scenes
was
are fun.
cringing hard. I've said it on this pod.
The
I'm not a
playbook
cringe
scene,
guy.
the coach's book scene, I was like, holy shit.
Ugh.
I'm like,
No
now
consequences.
I kind of feel I was shocked that no one caught her. She got away with being a bad kid. That's not what Pixar does.
Not what Pixar does.
There has to be consequences for her actions. I was shocked. I was shocked that no one walked in or coach never found out.
Yeah, you got to at least have like someone see her or something. Like that was kind of shocking. Like with that, we got to get to the hockey scenes for a second.
I was about to interrupt you and say we have to talk hockey because I have thoughts.
Because you're saying, oh, like I'm glad hockey's getting some representation here on the big, like it's gonna make $800 million most likely here worldwide. Like it's gonna get some recognition here. Yeah, this is so unrealistic. Let's just be honest. But I'm happy to see the light on hockey. I agree with you. But yeah, like this is kind of ridiculous. So what was going on here?
Ricky, she is the next Connor McDavid. She is like, I can't believe there's any question about her making the varsity team like as a freshman. I feel like she should skip high school and go to juniors. By the way, this is San Francisco that they're playing hockey. And
They're terrible.
And like it's not even like she is just, oh, everyone else sucks and she's good. She is like Pavel Datsyuk. She is just carving. They showed toe drags in this movie, bro. Right? They showed a little hockey at the in the first movie at the end. Like she makes a nice move, makes a pass. But to see like the attention to detail for these hockey scenes is pretty unbelievable.
The pass back to the goal.
Toe drags, think like the goalie, it's an absurd pass, especially from a 12-year-old goalie. But the idea of doing an outlet pass off the boards on the tape, like there's a hockey guy or a hockey girl that is designing these scenes. That is such a hard move to pull off. And then Riley, not only can she score, but she pulls a Cronwall reverse hit on her own teammate, on her own best friend. These people know what they're doing, Ricky. They know what they're doing. And people think probably that are listening right now, I'm speaking a different language. If you don't know hockey, my God, watch the Stanley Cup if you haven't been. Connor McDavid's about to like win, bring back the Oilers from a 3-0 deficit. But I was impressed. Even if it's unrealistic, they understand hockey.
Yeah, they had their scenes. I also just want to say my biggest gripe with the hockey, all right, is the final scene. The final scene where she is like, all right, spoilers. Should we start with like, hey, go see the movie if you haven't? Like, honestly, the spoilers aren't like huge. Like, you probably can assume what happens. But the final scene when she's in the penalty box, it says sorry, yada, yada, yada. And then she goes back out on the ice and she's like pure joy or whatever. And she passes it. Then they just cut the movie off. Yeah. They don't cut the movie off. They fast forward to her in high school, but they end the game. They don't like say what happens.
Well, it's more about her reconciling with her friends. It's like after having those painfully awkward moments and her shunning her friends in order to look cool, like her just being on the ice with them again. I think that was the most important thing before they went off to a different high school. That was the point, Ricky. You don't have to score the game-winning goal. That's what I also was.
Or pass.
That's where I felt like that's dumb. Where it's like you have anxiety, having the 3 goal horns in front of her, like rooting. Yep. We have to score 3 goals and we'll make the varsity team. But like the more I think about it, like that's kind of how like you envision tryouts as a kid. Where it's like if you get cut from a team, you're just like, well, I scored 4 goals in tryouts. Like, how did I not make the team? So it's like I put myself. It's very relatable for us because we're hockey players, and we're coaches, I also want to say this player's having an anxiety attack in
questionable. That's what I was about to say.
Where is the coach? What lack of ethics? What the lack of care for their players? Just terrible coach.
Her friends had to come help her. Like again, unrealistic.
Leaving your analysis of players in the open that anyone could see. Terrible. And I also this transitions to another point. Who's this movie more for? Kids or adults?
Adults.
I would
I
say
totally agree. There's an anxiety. I know anxiety attacks like happen, but like there's an anxiety attack, let alone the sexual innuendos that are in this movie. Freaking Pouchy when he rolls
oh
up the
boy.
sleeve and goes in on him, anger, and then the freaking dad dropping him off, dropping the kids off, and freaking says, "Oh, we have 3 days to ourselves. What are we gonna do, honey?" And then like does the eyebrows? Like
Oh,
this movie, the inside jokes,
something
like
that a kid will never pick up on, you know?
yeah, like and like there's the meme of Riley, it was like in the dreams or whatever. Riley's holding like the imaginary boyfriend's hand, like I will die for Riley guy from Inside Out 1. And then the boyfriend is looking out at Val, like that meme. Like there's like a bunch of stuff for adults and like more so like less of what I just said, but more like the, the sexual references and stuff that are like, holy crap, that's out like in front. And like that is supposed to be not like a secret, like a little tidbit, like in other Pixar and animated movies that they do.
Not only that, Ricky Flex, like the term anxiety, that's a lot for a kid to understand what it means. It's the antagonist of the movie. But that word is more prevalent. As a high school teacher and coach, like you hear the kids actually like that are Riley's age do hear that word a lot. And there is like an emphasis like on students that deal with anxiety. How do you deal with like pressures from your friends? How do you deal with pressures from school? How anxiety like has very the themes of this movie. I wish like we don't just show boring like documentaries or slideshows when as a teacher. I'll just show them Inside Out too, just to understand what anxiety is. That you're gonna have anxiety. You can't get rid of anxiety. You have to learn to live with anxiety in cohesion with all of your other feelings. That's the whole point of the movie. Like that's something that all high school kids should know, when you're starting to build up pressures in your life. That's good. But also there's this line that this was the emotional part of the movie. Joy is holding one of the, I think it's one of the core memories. And she says, I guess that's what happens when you grow up. You feel less joy. I was like, damn, that was for adults. Like that's where you're like kids will not like cry. You are trying to make adults cry. Like you are aiming towards them with that line. And god damn it, they got me. God damn it, they got me. And it was just super, super sad, right? As all these things build up, living with like I just said. But to hear that come from a Pixar movie, I was like, this definitely for older people.
Yeah, it was more. This movie was more complicated. Joy's protagonist like was a lot deeper, just like you just said, and it's just more relatable to adults. I feel like it is like the movie did a great job showcasing anxiety
They've
and
lived through
envy,
this stuff.
embarrassment. But yeah, we already lived through it, so it's more relatable. That's why I just feel like this is more for adults, and that's just kind of crazy because like Inside Out, it does crazy numbers on Disney Plus with kids that love it. But I feel like this is kids are gonna love it, but it's just because of like what's going on screen, not because of like what's actually happening and the meaning behind things and the story, which I think Inside Out 2 is connecting just to us more than it is to a 10-year-old.
Yeah, this movie reminded me of like how I acted in high school. How like the most important thing to me was making the hockey team or making some type of sports team, and I was or was to be cool, and I would sacrifice some of my better friends like for time spent with like more popular people. Like that type of thing exists, and when you reflect on it, you're like, God damn it, I was such an idiot back then. Like everyone that is an adult watching that movie is thinking that. Like everyone's made that mistake that Riley does in this movie. That's why it's so hard to watch because you think of the moments that you made those type of decisions. So I thought that is another way. Just once again, you're showing like it's good that kids see that and hopefully they make a different decision as they're growing up. But adults that like knew and lived through that was tough to watch. Ricky, I want to talk a little bit about the antagonist of this movie. Um, Anxiety. First off, amazing design for this character. Amazing design. The Muppet, like the hair that's frizzing everywhere, the one that's moving a zillion miles an hour, a control freak, and then excellently matched with like the voice performance of Maya Hawke. She was so freaking good in this movie. I thought she was the best performance by a country mile. I actually think Disgust was actually really good, and that wasn't with Mindy Kaling this time. It was I have to look it up, but someone
Lisa
else
something or
voiced her.
something.
Uh, I thought she was incredible. She was incredible too. Uh, Pixar, no pun intended. But I thought Anxiety was a good villain. You know what I miss though is when Pixar had like true villains. You know, you can't have a true villain in this movie because you have to like learn to live with anxiety. And this goes with like Turning Red. The villain or the antagonist is her mother. You know, it's not really the villain. I miss the days of Monsters Inc. and characters like Randall or like the big boss octopus spider dude. I miss the days of Lotso, of Sid. I miss the days where you had someone that you could just say, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. You can't have that anymore in Pixar. You can't have it. Like, what do you think about that, Ricky Flex?
I have it written down. There's no good like Anxiety's great, but we could have leaned into the villain more. The villain role. I think we could have gotten the big KS Bugs Life type of villain here. Hopper. Like we could have gotten that. We could have got
like, got that in one scene when they're messaging to the control room and like
right.
She's like, I know you're there, Joy. Like there was like they could really go evil here, but you can't. You can't.
Right. Like I'm trying to think. Coco, they had a villain, but it was like very late in the story.
That was a villain though. That's someone you hate.
Yeah,
sure.
Ernesto. Or
De La Cruz.
Trying to think. Onward didn't really have a villain. Incredibles 2, lame villain.
Like Syndrome, also great guy, just to hate.
Great villain. Luca didn't really have one. Toy Story 4 had one.
Luca had one, just a shitty one. It was the guy with the mustache, the Italian with the mustache, and then
the kid. That's lame. Yeah, I don't know. I think like I do miss the days of the villains.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I just miss the days of having like Pixar villains that we just like we're rooting against them.
But shout out Maya Hawke, Anxiety. I also agree, probably like the standout performer in this movie. But if we're gonna talk about the rest of this cast, like I'm gonna say this, like I don't like Envy, Ayo Edebiri, not enough screen time, or just didn't do great with not her. They didn't do a great job writing in that character. I think Embarrassment had his moments. Paul Walter Hauser, shout out Plump Boy, but again, not enough. Same with Envoy, or what the guy that's like, Ennui or girl, whatever. Not good enough. Anger, not as good in this one. Lewis Black, I know I'm looking at you. He's not as good in this. He had his moments, Ricky, but not as good.
Anger was soft in this movie, bro, compared to the first one. He was soft. I was disappointed. I loved Anger in the first one. This one, it felt like he took his foot off the gas pedal a little bit. You know,
like he was not Anger. It was more like he was more understandable of Joy. Like it's crazy. Like he should have a short fuse. Like he is short.
Yeah, dude. That's why the design of the character is so good with him and like the suspenders and like the tie up to the nines, you know. But I agree actually with the supporting cast. I think once again the design of all the characters great. Boredom or Ennui, you have like the slender type of build. You get the bangs over, and the person has the attitude, I'm so whatever over this. Envy, you know, is someone that seems like they're biting their nails all the time. I want to like in like this little green, and she's also, it makes sense that Envy is like the sidekick to Anxiety, you know, but I don't think they really had much to do in the movie. You know, how many times did Embarrassment have something to do other than protect Sadness from being found by Anxiety? What did really Boredom do aside from holding the control key the majority of the time? How many times did they actually press the Boredom key? How many times did you think Riley, oh yeah, that's the time where she was acting bored? Or how many times did she act envious? She wasn't envious the entire time. Like that was never showed in the movie.
She was more like a role, like a list, like a ears for Anxiety. You know, it wasn't like
she was like the right hand man. Like you know, it's like the first thug off the board. Like she wasn't. It just didn't make sense to me that like we have these characters here, but they're not being really used that much.
And they were hyping up Envy before this movie because of Ayo Edebiri. They showed you called this, by the way. They showed the Ayo Edebiri clips of her like doing the voice performance in the booth, and you said like, oh, like I think they just gave us all the lines, and they might have gave us all the lines in that promo.
Yeah,
like you called that. So I think you're exactly right. I want to say Amy Poehler like is good. This is like a perfect role for her. She got paid $5 million, good for her. But I also want to bring up this. So you mentioned Bill Hader not in it, and I forget the other one.
Mindy Kaling.
Right, not in it. Do you know why they're not in this?
Payment.
Yeah, they felt disrespected after the first one. They got paid like $100,000 or something, but no box office or anything connected to that. Amy Poehler got like 5 mil plus box office, so she's getting paid a crap ton. And Bill Hader and her were like, was it Mina or Minda? What is it?
Mindy
Yeah,
Kaling.
Mindy. They were like, oh, we want to get paid more, and Disney and Pixar were like, no. So like they're like, all right, we're out. And then they got Tony Hale and obviously this other person to replace them, and I think they were fine. And I think this is going to be maybe the start of something here, Doc. Not just with Pixar and Disney, but other people where maybe they don't have to hire Chris Pratt for $10 million to do a voice performance anymore. Like maybe you need one person, but then the supporting characters, no. I don't know. I think this might be the start of something.
Onward, think about Tom Holland and Chris Pratt. That movie was a bust. You know, I think it's more about the name brand. It's more about Inside Out. A kid does not care if Tom Holland and Chris Pratt are in a movie, right? It might be good to like recognize their voices, but you're not seeing their faces on screen. You know, Amy Poehler, I mean, she led the last movie. It makes $844 million. This one is the highest it's the biggest opening of an animated movie of all time, right? Isn't it? It wasn't the biggest opening.
Second, maybe.
Second, but it's just I think it proves like it's more about Inside Out than it is about Amy Poehler. You know, Maya Hawke is the best performance in the movie, and she plays the villain. It doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
I do think that Mindy Kaling replacement was actually better. I think Tony Hale I see more as the Bill Hader character. I like to me that makes sense. What is it? What Fear? Right?
Fear.
I thought that was a smart casting. It just I'm in agreement with you. I think another thing I just wanted to bring up, the ancillary characters, like the ones like are just in and out of the movie, for the most part, good. Pouchy, I can't stand. I thought that was a terrible addition. I thought it was interesting what they did with the animation because Pixar, it wasn't fully just Pixar like 3D style of animation, right? We have like anime, like Street Fighter type of animation, like 90s style video game, and then have the 2D along with the 3D Pixar. I found that super interesting with the Lance character, which is what is it, the video game Final something?
I don't know what it was called, but it looked like a Super Mario Bros. Oh, sorry, Super Smash Bros.
Yeah, I'll look it up in a second. But like then you had like Bluefy, which was like Blue's Clues / whatever Bluey that I think that kids love right now.
Mm-hmm.
I took that as a huge like Pixar is kind of not the main form of animated media that kids are consuming, and that like Pixar is recognizing like some kids are going to want that type of look to their animated movie, like to their animated characters. And to me, it just shows like they are kind of curbing to like Spider-Verse, how successful that was, right? And how big anime is. I feel like when Pixar, they were so cutting edge, and now it seems like the idea of incorporating different forms of animation and then just curtailing to what kids actually want, it just showed me Pixar isn't exactly it right now.
That showed me that Pixar's lost a step. They're reverting to that. That's not good. Pixar's supposed to be, like I said at the top, cutting edge of the technology, of the animation, of the original ideas, the creativity. But what are they doing now? Oh, we didn't do great at the box office with our original ideas. What are we going to do? We're going to do Inside Out 2, Toy Story 5. Like we're going to do all this other, go back to our IP. And what are we going to do to kind of, with the animation? We're going to have a Link type character out here. We're going to do a Bluey / Blues Clues type character to get these kids to like our movie. That's not what Pixar is. And that's why I talked about the hierarchy change there. It's so important. And I think it's, for me, that was actually really like a dour moment in the movie where I was like, holy crap, this is not the Pixar I know. And it's kind of telling where now kids like Encanto and Moana more than Pixar movies. You know, like, and also the animation looks very similar now. Obviously, Pixar or Disney movie.
I confuse them all the time that they're whether they're Pixar or not.
Pixar hasn't stood alone like at the top anymore. They don't. They've fallen down, and that was that 10-minute, 15 minutes was the big holy crap moment. They are not there anymore. They're not at the top of the pedestal. That was like the eye opener for me.
You could argue the pandemic didn't hurt any studio more than Pixar. right? When they had to make like that Disney Plus like dual type of release, or just make it on Disney Plus and never in theaters, you know? And then in that time frame, like you have like now like Studio Ghibli back, right, winning Best Animated Feature, Boy and the Heron, but also Spider-Verse is making waves. And even if Pixar like that, like it's kind of like Spider-Verse, it's like that is the move that's the most innovative type of animation you have. And in that time, like that between Spider-Verse 1 and 2, like Pixar is not really making visually creative type of projects. We're getting like Luca and we're getting Turning Red, you know, that takes place a lot in the real world. And there's a lot of creativity happening at these other studios. And like Pixar can't even say their movies are making more. Like they don't even have that to hinge on. Like Illumination is dominating at the animated box office. You got like Super Mario Brothers making $1 billion. The Minions movie makes $1 billion. We got Despicable Me 4 that's probably going to dethrone uh, Inside Out 2 as the highest grossing animated movie this year. It just seems like they are kind of on an upward battle right now. I think you made a great point there, Ricky Flex.
It's sad. It really is sad.
But I think this is the turning of the tides potentially. A good sign with Inside Out 2. Where do you think this ends up box office wise? First one makes 844. Do you think this is going to cross the $800 million threshold?
Well, unfortunately, this weekend or this upcoming weekend with Kinds of Kindness and the Bike Riders, not necessarily a huge box office weekend. So this has plenty of runway to go again. Like this is going to do absolute numbers this upcoming weekend.
You said Tuesday was massive, didn't you?
Yeah, and Monday, like 70 million combined. Or
that's insane.
That's
insane.
That would be one of the biggest opening weekends of the year so far.
If it was Monday and Tuesday, and like that like the Bike Riders and Kinds of Kindness will not make that combined for this upcoming weekend.
It's so sad because those two movies, I don't know, I have high hopes for them, but on a critical basis. But so I see another big weekend here. And then after that, it's A Quiet Place Day One, and then your boy Kevin Costner, Horizon, your movie. So that might stunt its growth, but again, different audience. That's definitely a much more adult audience. So there's plenty of runway until July 4th, which is Despicable Me 4. That's where it will end because that will take over the month of July until Deadpool and Wolverine, which is rated R, so not really going to be affected there. So I'm seeing high numbers. I'm seeing over 800 million again.
I'm going to say it's going to be in that range of 844. All right. I'm going to say it's going to make less. I think it's going to be over 800 million, though. Last thing I want to say before we hit our scores and put it in our Pixar tiers, something about this movie that I found really different from the first one. I don't know if we want to talk more about the ancillary characters. I thought Deep Dark Secret was amazing, by the way. Like that idea and that concept is so good. I wish we saw more of him. And we found. And what were you going to say?
Concept's good. Post-credit scene disappointing.
I didn't see it. I didn't watch it.
Did you hear about it?
No.
Okay, I'll spoil it for you.
Go ahead.
Post-credit scene, and this is the very last thing. You had to wait because animation movies have the longest credit scenes because there's so many people that work on these goddamn movies. Like it's crazy how many people do. So you had to wait all that time, or much more, like probably twice as long than a normal movie.
Ridiculous.
And they show this clip of Joy going in the vault and saying, "All right, it's time to come out, buddy. What's the secret?"
Oh, go ahead.
And the vault's like, "I burned a hole in the rug." So disappointing.
I thought it was, thinking of Pixar these last couple of years. And you saw the way that Riley was looking at the girl with the red hair in the movie. I thought the Deep Dark Secret was something that they were kind of laying out there. Like you connect the dots a little bit,
Oh, yeah, but I honestly misheard again. Maybe I misheard, but I thought it was burning. I burned.
That was the Deep Dark Secret. That's such a letdown, bro. I thought the design of that character was so good, though. The design of that was so awesome.
That was good.
Were you a Pouchy guy? Did you like Pouchy?
Hated Pouchy. Again, like back to what I was saying.
Saved the day, though.
I forgot to say a big flaw of this movie: lazy writing. Huge lazy writing. Like you could just call Pouchy and you could solve your problems. That I actually have big beef with Pouchy in this movie and a big red flag for the writing of this movie. Wow. I think it's crazy. And again, it's away from the Pixar animation. The non-Pixar animated character saves the day in this movie.
That's kind of controversial. And we're trying to say Pixar's back, and you decide to have a purely 2D animated character save the day. And it's also one that's unbearably annoying. question marks everywhere. Question marks everywhere. What does that say about the Pixar studio? Maybe we're reading too much into that, Ricky Flex. Like Bob Iger's watching that saying, like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, how is Pouchy saving the day? Like, that's his editor's note. I also, before score, what I meant to say initially, this movie felt faster and than Inside Out. And I think it didn't feel as weighty as the first Inside Out. I thought it was kind of breezily paced. I didn't think that was terrible, to be honest. I had a great time. I just felt like this is a sequel. Like the mechanization of like the control room, the core memories. You spent like a good amount of time explaining that in the first one. You pick up right where you left off. There's not like any over explanation, I thought. So I thought that was just something that was really distinct about it.
Sorry, one last thing. I think it's a good point, but on a separate subject, I just remembered this. Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems. Remember that? It was like inspiration for this movie.
Yeah.
There was no gambling, and the visuals, I don't know. So I don't know what the.
It was the playbook, like the red book of the coach. To me, that was it where I was sweating it out a little bit.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, I wanted to make sure I said that because I was like, where was this Uncut Gems inspiration? I really don't know.
I don't know if that was it, but I was feeling some anxiety watching that. And like the fact that she didn't have to pay for her consequences to me was just, wow, I can't believe Pixar has crossed their morals.
I guess it was the anxiety fueled movie.
Yeah. Scores. Yeah, you go first.
76.
Wow. With 76. I'm an 82.